Okay, so full disclosure, not only did I get a key for the game, which I usually show in the little title card thingy that I have at the start of all my reviews, and I referenced it, so I might as well just put it up now, future editing Sam, but I also work in the Arcade in Melbourne, which is a super awesome game developer kind of... There's lots of individual kind of offices where lots of indie studios set up, and that also includes Route 59, who are notable because they're the developers of Necrobarista, which I'm reviewing. So I don't know them personally or anything over the top like that, but for those who like to make sure that everything's above board, there you go. Let's do the review, shall we? So I have been really wanting to get into this game. I have seen it at a couple of PAX Australia events, and it's only improved every time I have seen it. It's been in a bit of a weird limbo for basically a year, but now it is legit actually out in the world, so let's talk about it. As you may be able to infer from the title, Necrobarista is a game involving death and coffee, which Melbourne is definitely known for. The coffee, not the death. Well, at least I hope we're not known for that. The game is almost entirely contained within the Terminal, a Carlton cafe where the dead can stop off for a day before moving on to the great beyond. And from this premise, there's a narrative that is kind of reminiscent of anime because it kind of spiderwebs out into all the individual characters with their own little worlds. You have Maddie doing the day-to-day interaction with the customers, Ashley's quest to become a combat robot champion, and Kishan, a recently dead who is confronted with moving on to an unknown great beyond. All the while there is this much bigger story that kind of starts off looming in the background that kind of gradually comes to the front, and it's all about, big band magic and their consequences and such. And I generally love the plot, but I have to say the thing that I really love about this is how Australian it is, and there are obvious levels to this. I mean, this game is set in Carlton, which is an inner suburb of my nearest city, Melbourne, which, firstly it's just like, it's near me. But it also means everyone's Australian, and with that we have standard Australian slang. We have cups of tea becoming cuppers, and petrol stations are servos, that kind of thing. But I feel like it runs a lot deeper than that. There's a really comforting feeling that I felt very at home with the dialogue. There's this big undercurrent of some of the intrinsic values of, what many consider to be ideals of the Australian culture. I mean, there's cracking jokes and keeping things light regardless of how awful things may be getting. There's a high value on keeping everyone happy, and there's the care and love that is inherent in Australian mateship. Hell, you could even argue that one side effect of mateship, which is putting yourself before others, is kind of pulling major weight in the actual story, the main story. This also is produced really well. The production has this really storyboard kind of style to it. So most of the frames are static characters on static backgrounds with some camera panning or zooming, whereas some have, limited animation to kind of show some of the actions that the characters are doing in that moment. Oh, and let's also mention that all of these characters are fully 3D models in a fully 3D environment, so it looks pretty sick. And audio is kind of on a similar level in the sense that the music, the artistry of the music, is fantastic, I must say. It is done by Kevin Penkin and his team, known for doing various other projects, including Florence. And similarly, there is, a bit of an interjection of sound design of a cup smashing on the floor or someone slamming a table kind of thing, to similar to the whole point of having some of the actions, just kind of adds a little bit more to what you might be expecting. I mean, usually when you think of a visual novel, it's usually just text on a screen and a static image that'll occasionally slide in out of happy, neutral, sad, neutral. So it's pretty fantastic stuff. But here's the thing, there's a lot of attention on the story and on how everything looks, and that means that some of the attention has to be diverted away from the gameplay. And I will definitely say, if you are not a fan of narrative-heavy gameplay light experience, this is not necessarily going to be a game for you. In essence, the gameplay is almost not even there. I walked into Necrobarista not expecting a whole lot gameplay-wise. It's a visual novel. But even with the bar as low as visual novel, it kind of managed to duck under that a little bit. Most visual novels will have a little bit of gameplay, even if it's just occasionally giving you binary choices that will change the course of everything, that will lead you into multiple endings. And in that sense, Necrobarista is actually kind of taking a step back from that and pulling back in terms of gameplay. Throughout the game, they will have occasionally highlighted words in which you can click and get kind of a definition, or usually it'll be some kind of joke or something. And it'll be various words like amateur or ritual or cuppa or whatever. And at the end of the chapter, they have all of these arranged into kind of this big tag cloud. And you have to pick 7 words, and the 7 words that you choose fall into one of a handful of categories, which include one for each of the main characters, one for guests as a whole, one for lore, one for death, one for magic, one for Melbourne, and so on. And each of these that you pick at the end will give you some kind of currency in that category. I refer to them as currency because in between the chapters you have an opportunity to walk around the terminal, once again, fully 3D model, very nice. And you can use some of this quote-unquote currency that you've accumulated to get additional story. Now, these will be things that are separate from the main plot. They will still involve characters in the main plot, but it will be these 2 characters talking, a month ago, or something to that effect. As far as I can tell, it has no influence on the game as a whole, but it's weirdly hard to tell. The reason is, at the time of recording this, it's kind of hard to replay games. So I finished the full game, and I went back into it sometime later on Steam, and just the title screen came up, and I noticed firstly there was no new game. There was continue, chapter select, options, and exit. So I went to options, and I did not find a erase save progress. This doesn't mean that you can't go through the narrative again, because you do have the chapter select, but even that's weirdly hard because you're not able to just continue when you get to the end of a chapter. You'll get to the end of a chapter, they'll drop you into the terminal, and then you won't be able to go through your usual methods to just go to the next chapter. I found the only way that I could really get it to move on was to pause, go to the title screen, and then go to chapter select again. Now I will justify my criticism of it doesn't really have any replay value and it doesn't have any changing narrative by the fact that you can just go to any part of the narrative and just start playing from there. I don't exactly understand how you could have a narrative that is affected by choices, but still let the character the player just jump in wherever the hell they feel like. In fact, one could even argue that the fact that the game seems designed exclusively for single use only may be because the developers, didn't consider that and didn't test for that. But either way, it is a rather perplexing omission, nonetheless. But overall, what I will say is, I'm kind of on the more positive side of this game. I know that there are people that are probably going to dislike it, because it does have some issues. I don't think anyone's under the illusion that it's going to be the best game of the year, but I will definitely say it is probably one of the best to come out of Australia. It's inspiring. It's made so well by people who absolutely know what they are doing, but I can definitely 100% see how people might dislike this, and to a certain extent I agree. But I kind of just feel with everything that the story is doing, it's personally worth, what little issues I might have with it. Anyway, that is the end of my review of Necrobarista. I would personally recommend you check it out, but I totally understand people not. I need to stop just, giving reviews and just be like, that's the end of the review. Let's move on with our lives. But thank you so much for watching, for listening. I'm super excited to be doing a couple of little videos here and there. And I really hope that you will subscribe and like and comment and give this some love. Also give some love to 8-Bit in general. We have so many awesome podcasts, including The Inconsolables, of which I am one of the 4 co-hosts, so check that out. But until then, subscribe for more of this goodness in your feed, and I will see you guys soon. Bye!